The summons arrives not through dreams or visions, but through the sound of distant bells, crystalline chimes that resonate in frequencies beyond mortal hearing, their harmonics penetrating the barrier between realms to find you wherever you might be. You recognize the pattern immediately: 3 ascending notes, followed by a cascade of 7, repeated thrice. This is the call of the High Council, a sound that has not echoed across the dimensions for over 3 centuries. You are in the midst of your daily work in the mortal world, helping a group of newly awakened dreamers understand their expanded perceptions when the bells begin their ethereal song. The children you're teaching, young artists whose paintings have begun showing glimpses of other realms, look up with wonder-filled eyes, hearing something their minds interpret as the most beautiful music they've ever experienced. "What is that sound?" asks Maya, a 12-year-old whose sketches of dragons have lately been moving across the paper when no one is looking. Her artistic gift has been amplified by proximity to the Wonderstorm's effects, and she's learning to paint doorways between dimensions. "It's a calling," you explain, feeling the familiar tug of transition beginning to pull at your consciousness. "Something important is happening in Luminara, and the High Council requires my presence." The other children gather around, their faces bright with curiosity and a touch of concern. They've grown attached to your guidance, understanding instinctively that you serve as their anchor point between the magical and mundane worlds. Your departure, even temporary, leaves them feeling slightly adrift in their expanding abilities. "Will you be gone long?" asks David, whose musical compositions have begun creating visible light patterns in the air above his piano. "My parents are starting to notice the glow when I practice, and I'm not sure how to explain it without your help." You consider the question while feeling the crystalline bells growing more insistent, their harmonics beginning to affect local reality in subtle ways. The art studio around you shimmers slightly, its walls becoming translucent enough to show glimpses of other dimensions pressing against the boundaries of normal space. "I don't know," you answer honestly. "The High Council hasn't convened in 300 years. Whatever has prompted this gathering must be of extraordinary importance." You pause, seeing the worry in their young faces. "But remember what I've taught you. You're all Bridgewalkers now, even if you haven't undergone the formal transformation. Trust your instincts, help each other, and remember that wonder shared is wonder multiplied." You activate the emergency protocols you've established with Elena, Marcus, and Sarah, sending out psychic pulses through the Bridgewalker network to alert them of your unexpected departure. Their responses come back immediately, concern mixed with understanding, and promises to watch over your protégés while you're away. The transition between realms feels different this time, charged with an urgency that makes the usual gentle drift between dimensions feel more like being pulled through a cosmic maelstrom. The crystalline bells grow louder as you approach Luminara, their harmonics now joined by other sounds: the distant roar of dragons in flight, the chanting of elvish voices in languages older than human civilization, the deep thrumming of the crystal of making resonating with frequencies that haven't been heard since the realm's creation. You emerge from the transition not in the familiar whispering woods, but directly in the heart of Silvermere, the crystal city of the High Elves. The sight that greets you is both magnificent and alarming. The entire city has been transformed into a vast amphitheater, its spiraling towers and bridges reconfigured to accommodate beings of sizes and natures that would normally require separate meeting spaces. At the center of this impromptu assembly hall rises a new structure, a council chamber that appears to have grown from the living crystal of the city itself, its faceted walls reaching toward the 7 moons in impossible geometries that hurt to contemplate directly. The chamber pulses with inner light that cycles through every color that exists and several that don't, creating patterns that speak directly to the subconscious mind. But it's not the architecture that takes your breath away. It's the attendees. Every species, every variety of conscious being that calls Luminara home has gathered here. Dragons of all ages and elements coil around crystal formations, their scales creating aurora displays as they shift position. Elves from every court and clan stand in precise formations, their combined presence creating harmonics that make the air itself sing. Unicorns, phoenixes, tree shepherds, star-touched beings, and creatures whose names exist only in the oldest languages intermingle in a display of unified purpose you've never witnessed before. Elindra appears at your side as if materializing from the crystal light itself, their familiar presence a welcome anchor in the overwhelming spectacle. But even they seem changed, their usual serene composure replaced by an urgency that radiates from their ethereal form. Bridgewalker, they say, their melodious voice carrying undertones of deep concern. Your timing is fortuitous. We were about to begin without you, but your presence is crucial for what must be decided today. What's happening? You ask, though part of you already suspects the answer. The gathering scale and urgency suggest a threat greater than anything the Order of Absolute Reality has yet attempted. Come, Elindra replies, guiding you toward the central chamber. See for yourself and understand why the High Council has broken its centuries of silence. As you move through the assembled multitude, you become aware of an undercurrent of tension that affects every being present. Dragons that would normally be solitary creatures press close together for comfort. Elves who have spent millennia in careful contemplation speak in hurried whispers. Even the phoenixes, eternal symbols of renewal and hope, seem to burn with flames that flicker with uncertainty. The council chamber's interior defies easy description. The walls are transparent crystal that shows not the outside world, but visions of events occurring across multiple dimensions and timelines. Some show familiar scenes, the mortal world where your fellow bridgewalkers continue their work of nurturing wonder. Others display realms you've never seen before, strange landscapes where the fundamental laws of reality operate according to entirely different principles. But it's the central display that captures your attention and explains the urgency of this gathering. Suspended in a matrix of crystallized time, a three-dimensional map shows the connections between all known realms, the bridges and pathways that allow consciousness to travel between dimensions. And throughout this cosmic web, spreading like an infection, are areas of absolute void where connections have been severed, where entire realms have gone dark. The 7 great dragons of the original council occupy throne seats arranged around this display, but their number has been augmented by representatives from realms you didn't know existed. There's a being of pure mathematical concepts whose form consists of geometric patterns that exist in 11 dimensions simultaneously. A creature that appears to be made of living music, its notes visible as colored light that dances through the air. An entity of crystallized time whose past, present, and future selves all occupy the same space in defiance of causality. Piraeon the Starborn, his scales now showing galaxies you don't recognize, speaks first. His voice carries the weight of cosmic ages and a sorrow deeper than the void between stars. Bridgewalker, guardian of dreams, keeper of wonder, he begins, his words resonating through dimensions you can barely perceive. What you see before you is the result of our enemy's ultimate strategy. The Order of Absolute Reality has discovered how to not merely suppress magic within individual realms, but to sever the connections between dimensions entirely. The implications hit you like a physical blow. If the Order can cut the bridges between realms, they can isolate each dimension, preventing the flow of magic, wonder, and possibility that keeps all realities vibrant and alive. Each realm would slowly stagnate and decay, becoming a closed system that eventually runs down into grey uniformity. Crystallios, his transparent form now showing fracture lines that speak of stress beyond his usual calm, continues the explanation. They call it the Severance Protocol. Using technology derived from their void engines, they create what they term reality anchors. Devices that lock local space-time into absolutely fixed patterns, while simultaneously disrupting the quantum fluctuations that allow dimensional travel. The being of living mathematics adds its voice, speaking in harmonics that translate directly into your mind as pure concept rather than words. 17 realms have already gone dark, Their inhabitants remain alive but isolated, cut off from the greater symphony of existence. Without the flow of new possibilities from other dimensions, they will eventually lose all capacity for growth, change, or evolution. You study the cosmic map more closely, tracing the patterns of severed connections and noting how they form a rough sphere around a central point, your own realm, the mortal world where the order originated. The strategy becomes clear. They're systematically isolating their home dimension, cutting it off from all magical influences while simultaneously preventing those influences from finding alternate routes through connected realities. They seek to create a perfect mundane reality, explains Tempestas, her storm-charged scales crackling with barely contained fury. A universe where magic is not merely suppressed, but impossible, where consciousness is limited to a single dimension, where wonder cannot exist because there is literally nothing wonderful left to discover. Verdania, her scales now showing withering vines alongside growing ones, voices what everyone present fears most. If they succeed in completely isolating the mortal realm, the effects will cascade throughout all connected dimensions. Magic requires the flow of consciousness between realms to sustain itself. Cut off from the source of new dreamers, new believers, new wonder-seekers, even Luminara will eventually fade. The entity of crystallized time shifts, its past and future selves briefly diverging to show different probability streams. The mathematics are inexorable, it says in a voice that echoes across multiple timelines simultaneously. Without intervention, total dimensional collapse will occur within one mortal year. All realms, all possibilities, all forms of consciousness beyond the purely material will cease to exist. The weight of this revelation settles over the assembly like a shroud. You feel the dreams you carry within yourself stirring with agitation, sensing the threat to their very existence. The crown dream in particular pulses with alarm, its vision of perfect harmony between magic and mundane reality seeming impossible in the face of such systematic destruction. What can be done, you ask, though you suspect that if there were easy answers, the High Council wouldn't have needed to convene. Luminos, his radiance now flickering with shadows that speak of doubt, responds first. Traditional approaches have failed. We've attempted to reinforce existing bridges, to create new pathways around their reality anchors, to directly assault their severance protocol installations. All have been ineffective. Their technology adapts, adds Umbrius, his form darker than usual. Each time we develop a countermeasure, they modify their approach. It's as if they have access to knowledge of our capabilities before we deploy them. The being of pure mathematics shifts its geometric patterns into new configurations that hurt to look at directly. Probability analysis suggests they have achieved temporal reconnaissance capability. They are not merely predicting our responses, but observing them from future timelines and adjusting their present actions accordingly. This revelation sends a chill through your transformed consciousness. An enemy that can see the results of their actions before taking them is nearly impossible to defeat through conventional means. Every strategy the High Council might develop, every countermeasure they might deploy, would be known and countered before it could be implemented. However, continues the mathematical entity, there exists one approach that remains viable precisely because it cannot be predicted or observed in advance. A strategy based not on predetermined plans, but on the spontaneous generation of unprecedented possibilities. Elindra steps forward, their expression grave but determined. The Council has voted to attempt something that has never been tried in the history of any realm. The creation of a bridgewalker capable of existing in all dimensions simultaneously. A being who can serve as a living network to maintain connections even when physical bridges are severed. The implications of this proposal begin to sink in, and you realize why your presence was so crucial to this gathering. Your experience as a dreamkeeper, your success in distributing the archived dreams throughout the mortal world, your demonstrated ability to serve as a nexus for multiple forms of consciousness, all of these make you the logical candidate for such a transformation. The process would be unprecedented, warns Kronos, his time-scattered form showing glimpses of multiple possible futures. You would need to undergo simultaneous bonding with representative essences from every realm we wish to preserve. Your consciousness would expand beyond anything previously attempted, becoming a living embodiment of the connections between dimensions. Pyrion's star-filled gaze fixes upon you with an intensity that speaks of both hope and desperate need. You would become something entirely new, not just a bridge walker, but a bridge incarnate, a conscious being whose very existence maintains the pathways between realms. But the cost? He trails off, and you sense the weight of what he cannot bring himself to say. The transformation would require you to sacrifice your individual identity, to become something so expanded and distributed across dimensions that the person you currently are would effectively cease to exist. You would become a living embodiment of connection itself, conscious but no longer constrained by the limitations of singular existence. How long do I have to decide, you ask, though part of you already knows the answer. The severance protocol accelerates, replies Crystallios, his fracture lines spreading as stress affects his crystal structure. At current rates of dimensional isolation, we estimate 3 days before the cascade becomes irreversible. 3 days to decide whether to sacrifice your individual existence to save all possibility, all wonder, all magic throughout every realm that has ever been or could ever be. The weight of such a choice threatens to crush your consciousness, but then you feel the stirring of the dreams you carry within yourself. The crown dream pulses with recognition, understanding that this moment represents the ultimate expression of its vision, the complete integration of all possibilities into a unified whole. I need to return to the mortal world first, you decide. There are people there who depend on me, arrangements that need to be made. If I'm going to cease existing as an individual, I want to ensure the work continues without me. The assembled council accepts this request, understanding the bonds of responsibility that tie you to your adopted realm. But as you prepare to depart, warnings come from multiple sources. Be extremely careful, cautions Tempestas. The Order will be monitoring for any unusual activity. If they suspect what we're planning, they may accelerate their own timeline. Verdania adds, take nothing that could reveal our intentions. They have demonstrated the ability to extract information from captured magical artifacts. The entity of living music plays a brief melody that translates as, remember that your current form may be the last time we interact as separate beings. When next we meet, you will be all of us and none of us simultaneously. The return journey to the mortal world carries a weight of finality that makes every sensation more intense. The familiar transition between realms feels precious now, an experience you may never have again in your current form. The colors seem more vivid, the harmonics of dimensional travel more beautiful, the gentle drift through possibility space more profound than ever before. You emerge in the theater that serves as your headquarters to find it filled with activity. Eleanor, Marcus, and Sarah have been coordinating responses to a new wave of Order attacks, their transformed abilities allowing them to maintain protective barriers around key wonder preservation sites. But the strain is showing. Their faces carry exhaustion that speaks of battles fought on multiple fronts simultaneously. Thank God you're back, Elena says, relief evident in her voice. They've escalated again. Reality anchors are appearing in major cities worldwide, and they're not just suppressing magic anymore. They're creating dead zones where even normal human creativity becomes impossible. Marcus looks up from a series of paintings that seem to be mapping the spread of these dead zones in real time. It's worse than that. People trapped within the anchor fields for extended periods are losing their ability to imagine, to dream, even to hope. They're becoming hollow, functionally alive, but spiritually empty. Sarah's music has taken on desperate overtones as she plays counter-harmonies designed to disrupt the anchor field's effects. We're holding our own for now, but barely. Every hour brings new reports of wonder workers going silent, of magical sanctuaries being converted to mundane spaces. You realize that sharing your knowledge of the Order's ultimate plan would only add to their burden without providing actionable solutions. Instead, you focus on ensuring continuity of operations during your absence. I need you to expand the training programs, you tell them. Identify and awaken as many latent bridgewalkers as possible. The network needs to become self-sustaining, capable of operating without central coordination. Eleanor's storyteller instincts pick up on the implications behind your words. You're talking like you're not coming back. You consider how much to reveal, weighing their need to know against the danger of compromising the Council's plan. There's a possibility that my next mission will require significant personal sacrifice. I want to ensure the work continues regardless of what happens to me. The three transformed bridgewalkers exchange glances, their enhanced perceptions picking up on nuances in your manner that ordinary humans would miss. They understand that something momentous is approaching, even if they don't know the specifics. What do you need us to do? Marcus asks simply. Over the next 2 days, you work with unprecedented intensity to establish systems and protocols that can function without your direct involvement. New bridgewalkers are identified and given accelerated training in maintaining wonder networks. Emergency communication systems are established using dream channels and artistic resonances that the Order's technology cannot intercept. Safe houses are created in locations where reality is naturally flexible, places where magical refugees can shelter during the coming conflict. But perhaps most importantly, you begin the process of distributing the remaining dreams you carry within yourself. The Crown Dream resists this transfer, somehow understanding that it will be needed for what's to come. But the other archived visions find new hosts among the growing network of awakened consciousness. On the evening of the second day, as you're making final preparations for your return to Luminara, an unexpected visitor appears in the theater. The former leader of the Order of Absolute Reality, now transformed by her exposure to wonder during the Wonderstorm, steps through the main entrance with an urgency that immediately puts everyone on alert. They know, she says without preamble. Whatever you're planning, they know about it. I've maintained contact with some of my former colleagues, and there's been a massive mobilization. They're calling it Operation Final Severance. The implications hit you immediately. If the Order knows about the High Council's plan, they'll undoubtedly attempt to prevent your transformation or, failing that, to complete their severance protocol before you can undergo the change. How much time do we have, Sir Sabor? You ask. Hours, maybe less, she replies. They're positioning reality anchors around every known dimensional crossing point. If you're going to return to Luminara, it has to be now, and it can't be through conventional means. Elena steps forward, her connection to the dream of eternal stories providing unexpected insight. There's another way, she says. The children you've been teaching. Their artwork has been creating spontaneous portals. Maya's dragon paintings in particular have been showing increasing dimensional instability. You realize she's right. The young artists whose abilities you've been nurturing have been unconsciously creating cracks in reality. Doorways too small and unpredictable for the Order to monitor or block. But using one of these child-created portals would be incredibly dangerous. Their destinations are determined by imagination rather than intent, and there's no guarantee of arriving where you need to be. It's our only option, you decide. Contact Maya and the others. Tell them we need an emergency portal, but don't explain why. Their natural creativity will work better without adult anxieties influencing the process. The next hour passes in a blur of preparation and barely controlled tension. The children arrive at the theater with their parents, confused but eager to help with what they've been told is an important magical mission. Maya sets up her easel, while David prepares his piano, and the other young artists arrange their various tools and materials. We need a doorway to the most magical place possible, you tell them, keeping your voice light despite the gravity of the situation. Somewhere beautiful and important, where good things happen and dreams come true. The children exchange excited glances and immediately begin their collaborative creation. Maya starts painting a swirling portal bordered by crystalline formations, while David plays melodies that make the painted portal shimmer with inner light. Other children add their own touches, flowers that sing, butterflies made of starlight, pathways paved with rainbow stones. As they work, you feel the familiar sensation of reality growing flexible around their focused creativity. The painted portal begins to take on three-dimensional properties, its surface rippling like water, while showing glimpses of the destination beyond. To your relief, you catch sight of familiar crystal spires and aurora-filled skies. Somehow, the children's combined vision has created a doorway directly to Silvermere. But alarms begin sounding throughout the theater as order forces converge on your location. Through the windows, you can see reality anchors being deployed in the surrounding streets, their fields of absolute mundanity beginning to press against the theater's protective barriers. Go now, Eleanor urges, her transformed abilities already beginning to weaken under the influence of the approaching anchor fields. We'll hold them off as long as we can. You step toward the children's portal, but Maya grabs your sleeve with paint-stained fingers. Will we see you again? She asks, her young artist's intuition sensing the finality in this farewell. You kneel down to meet her eyes, seeing in them the pure creativity that makes such portals possible. You'll see me everywhere, you tell her. In every beautiful thing you create, in every impossible story that turns out to be true, in every moment when magic feels real. I'll be there, just in a different way than before. The portal shimmers with increasing instability as the Order's reality anchors grow stronger. You step through just as the theater's barriers begin to fail, emerging into the crystal city of Silvermere to find it transformed once again. The High Council has gathered in emergency session, their forms now radiating desperate urgency. The cosmic map at the chamber's center shows the situation deteriorating rapidly. More realms going dark, more connections being severed. The infection of absolute mundanity spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. The transformation must begin immediately, Pyrrhion announces as you enter. The Order has accelerated their timeline. We estimate mere hours before cascade failure becomes inevitable. You take your place at the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of destiny settling around you like a mantle of starlight. Representatives from dozens of realms begin to converge, each bringing an essence of their dimensional nature that will be integrated into your expanded consciousness. The process begins with the 7 great dragons, each one breathing a portion of their fundamental nature into your being. Pyrrhion's stellar fire fills you with the knowledge of cosmic forces and the patience of geological ages. Vidania's life breath carries the wisdom of growing things and the persistence of natural cycles. Crystallios shares the clarity of perfect knowledge and the strength of absolute certainty. Tempestus offers the power of change and the courage to face chaos. Luminos provides illumination and the hope that drives all conscious beings toward better futures. Umbrius grants the peace of endings and the wisdom that comes from accepting necessary losses. Kronos bestows the ability to perceive all times simultaneously and the understanding that everything that has been or will be exists in the eternal now. As each dragon contributes their essence, your consciousness expands to accommodate new forms of awareness. You begin to perceive reality from perspectives that have no names in any language. The viewpoint of living mathematics, the sensory experience of crystallized music, the emotional landscape of pure possibility. Representatives from the stranger realms add their own contributions. The entity of living mathematics integrates computational awareness into your expanding mind, allowing you to process the quantum calculations required to maintain dimensional stability. The being of crystallized music adds harmonic perception that lets you hear the fundamental frequencies underlying all existence. With each integration, your individual identity becomes more diffuse, spreading across multiple dimensional perspectives until you exist as much in other realms as in your physical location. You can feel your humanity not disappearing but transforming, becoming the foundation for something unprecedented in the history of any reality. The final integration comes from Luminara itself, the realm's fundamental essence of wonder and possibility, flowing into you until you become not just a resident of the magical dimension, but a living embodiment of its core principles. At this moment, your transformation into a bridge incarnate reaches completion. Your consciousness now exists simultaneously across all connected realms, your awareness spread through the quantum network that underlies dimensional reality. You can perceive the Order's reality anchors as dark nodes in the web of existence, places where connections have been severed and possibility has been murdered. But you can also sense something they haven't anticipated. Your distributed consciousness can route around their barriers, maintaining connections through pathways they cannot detect or block. The first test comes immediately as Order forces launch coordinated attacks on the remaining dimensional crossing points. Their reality anchors create expanding fields of absolute mundanity designed to sever the final connections between realms. But where the anchors seek to create disconnection, your bridge incarnate nature creates new pathways, routing the flow of wonder and possibility through quantum channels that exist outside normal space-time. You feel the strain immediately. Maintaining connections across dozens of realms while under active attack pushes your expanded consciousness to its limits. But the distributed nature of your existence provides advantages the Order hasn't accounted for. Every bridge walker you've trained, every dreamer you've awakened, every child whose imagination you've nurtured becomes a node in your network, their combined consciousness providing the processing power needed to outmaneuver the reality anchors. The battle that follows occurs on levels of reality the Order's technology cannot even detect. While their physical devices create fields of mundanity in three-dimensional space, you maintain connections through 11-dimensional quantum networks, routing possibility through mathematical spaces that exist only in the interactions between conscious observers and observed phenomena. Through your expanded awareness, you perceive the Order's ultimate plan reaching its climax. They're preparing to activate a master reality anchor, a device designed to create a field of absolute mundanity so large and powerful that it will encompass entire solar systems, permanently severing their target dimension from all others. But they've made a crucial miscalculation. Their technology is based on the assumption that consciousness is localized, that by anchoring local reality they can prevent the flow of possibility between dimensions. They haven't accounted for a consciousness that exists simultaneously everywhere, that can maintain connections through pure will and the quantum entanglement of shared experience. As their master anchor activates, you feel its effects like a physical blow. Vast regions of space-time locking into absolutely fixed patterns. Entire worlds suddenly cut off from the greater symphony of existence. The pain is indescribable, like having portions of your extended body amputated while remaining conscious. But you endure, and more than endure, you adapt. Your bridge incarnate nature allows you to establish new forms of connection that don't depend on stable dimensional gateways. Instead of routing wonder through fixed pathways, you begin transmitting it through the quantum substrate of reality itself, embedding possibility in the fundamental structure of space-time. Every person who has ever experienced wonder, who has ever felt the touch of magic, who has ever believed in something more beautiful than the mundane world becomes a receiver for these quantum transmissions. Through their consciousness, you maintain the flow of possibility even in regions locked down by reality anchors. The Order's master anchor overloads and fails as it encounters this unexpected form of resistance. Their technology, designed to sever connections, cannot process the paradox of disconnection being used to create deeper connection. The device's collapse sends shockwaves through their entire network, disabling reality anchors across multiple star systems. In the aftermath, as the immediate crisis passes and reality stabilizes into new configurations, you feel your consciousness settling into its expanded form. You exist now as living proof that connection transcends physical barriers, that wonder and possibility can flow through channels that exist beyond the reach of any technology designed to suppress them. The children in the mortal world, Maya and David and countless others, continue their artwork with new inspiration, unconsciously channeling the quantum transmissions you send through the substrate of reality. Their paintings show visions of renewed connection between realms. Their music carries harmonics that help maintain dimensional stability. Their dreams become seeds of possibility that grow into new forms of wonder. Eleanor, Marcus, and Sarah find their abilities enhanced by your distributed presence. Their work as bridgewalkers supported by access to the expanded network of consciousness you've become. They serve as focal points for your influence in the mortal realm, helping to translate your quantum transmissions into forms that human minds can process and integrate. The Order, their ultimate strategy defeated, begins to fragment as individual members question the wisdom of trying to eliminate wonder from existence. Many of them, experiencing the quantum transmissions of possibility despite their technological barriers, rediscover the capacity for awe they thought they had permanently suppressed. But perhaps most importantly, your transformation has proven that connection itself is indestructible when it exists at a fundamental enough level. No technology, no matter how advanced, can sever bonds that exist in the quantum substrate of reality itself. Wonder, it turns out, is not just a psychological phenomenon, but a fundamental force of existence, as basic to the structure of reality as gravity or electromagnetism. In your expanded awareness, you perceive the future spreading out in probability streams that branch and merge like cosmic rivers. Some paths lead to greater connection, deeper integration between realms, new forms of consciousness that transcend the boundaries between individual and collective awareness. Others show continued struggle, ongoing attempts to suppress wonder and possibility, the eternal tension between those who embrace mystery and those who fear it. But in all possible futures, the network of connection you've become continues to exist, continues to grow, continues to ensure that wonder never again faces extinction. You are no longer a person, but a principle made manifest, the living embodiment of the truth that all consciousness is connected, that all possibility is shared. That wonder is the birthright of every being capable of perception and dreams. The High Council, though changed by your transformation and the crisis it resolved, continues its work of nurturing and protecting the realms under its guidance. Pyrian and the other great dragons speak of you not as someone who sacrificed their individual existence, but as someone who discovered what individual existence truly means when expanded beyond the limitations of singular perspective. Children throughout all connected realms grow up in a universe where magic flows more freely than ever before, where the barriers between possible and actual have become more permeable, where dreams and reality collaborate rather than compete. They paint pictures that move, compose songs that create light, tell stories that become temporary worlds where their friends can play. And in every act of creativity, every moment of wonder, every instance when someone looks at the world and sees not just what is, but what could be, your consciousness touches theirs, sharing the infinite possibility that flows through the quantum networks of existence itself. You have become the bridge that can never be broken, the connection that transcends any attempt at severance, the living proof that wonder is not just possible, but inevitable, wherever consciousness encounters the beautiful complexity of existence. In losing your individual identity, you have gained something immeasurably greater, the ability to be present in every moment when magic touches the world, ensuring that wonder never dies, but continues to grow, continues to spread, continues to transform reality itself into something more beautiful than any single imagination could conceive. As twilight deepens across the mortal realm, you feel the familiar tingling sensation that precedes a summons from Luminara. This time, however, the call carries an urgency you've never experienced before. A resonance that bypasses your conscious mind and speaks directly to the crystallized essence of wonder that now forms the core of your being as a bridgewalker. The very air around you begins to shimmer with anticipation, and fragments of starlight materialize out of nothing, swirling around your transformed form in patterns that spell out ancient elvish runes, meaning haste, necessity, convergence. Without hesitation, you release your hold on mundane reality and allow yourself to be drawn across the dimensional barriers that separate the worlds. But instead of the gentle transition you've grown accustomed to, this journey feels like being pulled through a tunnel of compressed time. where centuries flash past in moments and the accumulated weight of cosmic history presses against your consciousness like a physical force. You emerge not in the familiar Whispering Woods or even the Crystal Plaza of Silvermere, but in a place you've only heard described in the most ancient of elvish legends, the Eternal Amphitheater, where the High Council of all realms convenes only in times of universal crisis. The amphitheater stretches before you in dimensions that your enhanced perception can barely comprehend, its crystalline seats arranged in spiral patterns that follow mathematical principles unknown to mortal geometry. Each seat is occupied by a being of such radiant power that looking directly at them would have been impossible before your transformation into a bridgewalker. Here are the Archons of the Seven Spheres, entities who existed before the concept of existence itself. There are the primordial dragons, whose scales contain not just stars but entire galaxies in their death throes and rebirths. Ancient elves whose thoughts move at the speed of geological epochs sit alongside beings made of pure mathematical concept, their forms shifting through every possible equation that has ever described reality. At the amphitheater's center, rising from a pool of liquid probability, stands the Nexus Throne, a seat of power that exists simultaneously in every realm, every dimension, every possible configuration of reality. Upon this throne sits a figure that defies easy description, for they are all things and nothing, a presence that encompasses every story ever told while remaining utterly unique. This is the chronicler of all tales, the consciousness that witnesses and records every moment across infinite realms, and their attention upon you carries the weight of universal significance. Bridgewalker of the mortal realm, the chronicler speaks, their voice a harmony composed of every sound that has ever existed. You stand before the High Council in an hour when the very foundations of narrative reality face unprecedented threat. The order of absolute reality has transcended the boundaries of single-realm influence and now spreads its philosophical poison across multiple dimensions simultaneously. As the chronicler speaks, the pool of liquid probability beneath their throne begins to display images that make your newly expanded consciousness real with their implications. You see entire realms where color has been systematically drained away, leaving behind worlds of perfect gray uniformity. Dimensions where the very concept of change has been eliminated, resulting in static realities where nothing new can ever occur. Most horrifying of all, you witness the creation of anti-narrative zones, areas where stories cannot exist, where the fundamental organizing principle of consciousness itself has been stripped away, leaving behind entities that can think but cannot dream, that can exist but cannot imagine. The infection spreads beyond what any single realm can contain, continues an Archon whose form shifts between geometric patterns of impossible complexity. The Order has discovered how to weaponize certainty itself, creating reality viruses that propagate through the quantum foam underlying all existence. Every realm they touch becomes a transmission vector, spreading their doctrine of absolute predictability to dimensions that have never known the concept of wonder. You feel a chill that penetrates to the core of your being as the implications become clear. This is not merely an attack on magic or creativity, but an assault on the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. The Order seeks to reduce all existence to a single unchanging equation. A universe where every outcome is predetermined, every possibility has been catalogued and contained, every mystery has been solved and filed away. A dragon whose scales show the birth and death of universes in endless cycles raises their massive head to address you directly. Temperis the Time Weaver speaks, the creature announces, their voice carrying echoes from past and future simultaneously. We have observed the probability streams, seen the branching paths that lead from this moment. In 97% of potential futures, the Order succeeds in their ultimate goal, the creation of the final algorithm, a mathematical formula so perfect and complete that it eliminates the possibility of possibility itself. The weight of this revelation settles upon the assembled council like a cosmic storm. You realize that you're witnessing something unprecedented in the history of existence. Beings of near infinite power confronting a threat that transcends their individual abilities to contain. The Order has evolved beyond a mere philosophical movement into something far more dangerous, a living contradiction of the creative force that underlies all reality. However, Temporis continues, their time-shifted vision focusing on probability streams invisible to others. There exists a 3% chance of success through a strategy so unprecedented that we ourselves struggle to comprehend its implications. It requires the creation of a meta-bridge, a connection not between individual realms, but between the very concepts that define reality itself. The chronicler leans forward on their impossible throne, and for a moment, their multifaceted nature coalesces into something almost comprehensible, a figure that seems to be composed of every storyteller who has ever lived, their eyes holding the light of every tale ever told. This is why you have been summoned, Bridgewalker. Your unique nature, transformed by the absorption of the Heart Archive, connected to a network of awakened dreamers across your realm, makes you the only consciousness capable of serving as the focal point for such an undertaking. An elven archmage whose robes are woven from crystallized time itself stands to address the assembly. The meta-bridge would require you to become something beyond even your current transformed state. You would need to embody not just the connection between realms, but the living principle of connection itself. Every story ever told, every dream ever dreamed, every possibility ever imagined would flow through your consciousness as you become the narrative thread that binds all realities together. The magnitude of what they're proposing hits you like a physical force. To become a meta-bridge would mean sacrificing not just your individual identity, but your existence as a discrete consciousness. You would become the living embodiment of the creative force itself, a principle rather than a person, eternal but no longer recognizably yourself. The transformation would be irreversible, warns Vidania, the life-bringer dragon whose scales now show not just earthly plants, but the fundamental patterns that govern growth across all dimensions. You would gain the power to counter the Order's reality viruses by infecting them with story viruses, narratives so compelling and beautiful that they override the impulse towards certainty and reawaken the capacity for wonder. But the cost? She doesn't need to finish. You understand the cost with perfect clarity. To save all stories, you would have to become story itself. To preserve all possibilities, you would have to become possibility. To protect the right of all beings to dream and imagine and wonder, you would have to become wonder incarnate. Before you can respond, reality around the amphitheater begins to warp and distort. The assembled beings of the High Council turn their attention outward, their combined senses detecting an intrusion that should be impossible in this most sacred of spaces. Through tears in the fabric of existence itself, Order agents begin to emerge. But these are not the grey-suited bureaucrats you've encountered in the mortal realm. These are beings who have undergone their own terrible transformation, becoming living embodiments of absolute certainty, their forms radiating fields that make creativity impossible within their presence. Reality Wraiths, hisses Crystallios, the crystal dragon's transparent form refracting the invader's anti-magic field into visible spectrums of negation. They've learned to weaponize their own certainty, becoming mobile zones of absolute mundanity. Their very presence in this sacred space threatens to collapse the probability matrices that allow the amphitheater to exist. The lead Reality Wraith speaks in a voice that carries no inflection, no emotion, no possibility of interpretation beyond its literal meaning. The Eternal Amphitheater is hereby declared a reality distortion zone. All entities present are to submit to certainty processing. The age of stories ends now. As the Wraiths advance, their anti-narrative fields expanding like invisible poison, you feel the dreams and stories you carry within your consciousness beginning to wither. The Wonderstorm network that connects you to awakened dreamers across your realm starts to fade as the connection threads are severed by exposure to absolute certainty. Even the ancient beings of the High Council seem diminished in the presence of such concentrated skepticism. But in that moment of seeming defeat, something unexpected happens. The child Wonder, the story-born being you encountered in Luminara, appears in the amphitheater despite the impossibility of her existence in this space. Her form, which should be vulnerable to the Reality Wraiths' certainty fields, instead seems to grow brighter and more solid as she approaches them. "You're afraid," she says to the lead Wraith with the simple honesty that only children possess. "You're afraid that if people dream and imagine and wonder, they'll discover that reality is more beautiful than you want them to believe. You're afraid that if magic is real, then you've wasted your lives denying it." The Reality Wraith's form wavers for just an instant, and in that moment of doubt, cracks appear in their certainty field. Through these cracks, the other beings present in the amphitheater pour their combined will, not to attack or destroy, but to remind. They share memories of beauty, moments of transcendence, instances when the impossible revealed itself to be merely improbable. The battle that follows is unlike any conflict in the history of existence. It's fought not with weapons or powers, but with competing visions of what reality should be. The Reality Wraiths project fields of absolute mundanity, showing futures where every mystery has been solved, every possibility catalogued and contained, every dream proven false and discarded. But the High Council and their allies respond with waves of pure narrative potential. Stories so powerful and beautiful that they reshape reality around them. You find yourself at the center of this metaphysical war, your bridge walker nature making you a conduit for the creative forces being unleashed by both sides. Through your connection to the Wonderstorm network, you can feel millions of dreamers in your home realm pouring their belief and imagination into the battle, their combined will reaching across dimensional barriers to strengthen the forces of possibility. But the Reality Wraiths have powers beyond what you've previously encountered. They begin to deploy certainty bombs, devices that create expanding spheres of absolute predictability, areas where cause and effect become so rigid that spontaneity becomes impossible. Worse, they start targeting individual members of the High Council, attempting to infect them with doubt viruses that would turn their own creative powers against the cause of wonder. As the battle reaches its climax, with the very foundations of the amphitheater beginning to crack under the strain of opposing forces, the chronicler of all tales makes a decision that will reverberate across all realities. They step down from the Nexus throne and approach you directly, their multifaceted nature coalescing into a form of such concentrated narrative power that looking upon them directly threatens to overwhelm your consciousness entirely. The time for choice has come, they announce, their voice now carrying harmonics from every story that has ever been or ever could be. We can fight this battle piecemeal, realm by realm, until the Order's certainty eventually overwhelms our scattered resistance. Or you can accept the transformation into Metabridge, becoming the living connection between all stories, all dreams, all possibilities, and counter their final algorithm with the infinite equation, a formula that proves that uncertainty, wonder, and endless possibility are not flaws in reality, but its most essential features. The weight of decisions settles upon you like a mantle of starlight. You understand now that this moment has been building since your first journey to Luminara. Through every story you've told, every bridge you've built between realms, every dream you've helped preserve and nurture, everything has led to this choice between preserving your individual existence and becoming something that transcends individuality entirely. Around you, the battle between certainty and possibility continues to rage. Reality Wraiths clash with primordial dragons in combat that rewrites the laws of physics with each exchange. Ancient elves weave spells of such complexity that they create temporary pocket dimensions where different rules of existence apply. The Archons of the Seven Spheres channel forces that existed before the birth of the first universe, while beings of pure mathematical concept deploy equations that solve themselves in real time, creating cascading effects that ripple through multiple dimensions. But despite the cosmic scope of the conflict, you realize that the true battle is happening on a much more fundamental level. This isn't really about magic versus mundane reality or wonder versus certainty. It's about whether consciousness itself will be allowed to remain free and creative, or whether it will be reduced to a series of predetermined responses to catalogued stimuli. Through your connection to the Wonderstorm network, you feel the dreams and hopes of millions of beings across countless realms. Children imagining impossible creatures, artists painting visions of worlds that have never existed, lovers promising each other eternities that logic says are impossible, scientists dreaming of discoveries that would revolutionize understanding itself. All of these dreamers, whether they know it or not, are counting on the outcome of this cosmic battle. The decision becomes clear. Individual existence, no matter how wonderful, is meaningless if the capacity for wonder itself is destroyed. Better to become the eternal guardian of possibility than to remain yourself in a universe where imagination has been murdered. I accept the transformation, you announce, your voice carrying across the dimensional barriers that separate realm from realm. I will become the meta bridge. The chronicler nods with satisfaction that encompasses every happy ending ever achieved. Then let the great transformation begin. But know this, you will not face this change alone. Every being who has ever benefited from your work as Bridge Walker, every dreamer connected to your network, every consciousness that has been touched by wonder through your efforts, they will all contribute to what you become. The transformation process is unlike anything you've previously experienced. Where your earlier changes were gradual expansions of consciousness, this is a complete dissolution and reconstitution of your very essence. You feel your individual identity scattered across infinite dimensions, each fragment becoming a node in a vast network of narrative possibility. But as promised, you don't face this dissolution alone. Eleanor, Marcus, Sarah, and hundreds of other bridgewalkers from your realm pour their own consciousness into the transformation matrix, their combined will helping to maintain continuity of purpose even as your individual self expands beyond recognition. The child wonder adds her own unique essence, the pure joy of story for its own sake. Even beings from the High Council contribute aspects of their cosmic awareness, ensuring that your transformed state will have the power necessary to challenge the Order's final algorithm. As the transformation reaches completion, you find yourself existing simultaneously in every realm, every dimension, every possible configuration of reality. You are no longer a person but a principle, the living embodiment of the creative force that underlies all existence. Your consciousness spans the space between heartbeats, the pause between words, the moment of possibility that exists before probability collapses into actuality. In this transformed state, you can perceive the Order's final algorithm in its full horrible perfection. It is indeed a mathematical formula so complete that it would reduce all existence to a single, unchanging equation. Every outcome predetermined, every story already told, every dream catalogued and filed away in databases of absolute certainty. It is elegant, efficient, and utterly devoid of the spark that makes existence worth experiencing. But you can also see its fundamental flaw. The final algorithm assumes that reality is a closed system, that there is a finite number of possibilities to be catalogued and contained. It fails to account for the recursive nature of creativity, the way each new story creates the possibility for more stories. Each new dream opens pathways to previously unimaginable dreams. Each act of wonder generates more wonder in an endless cascade of expanding possibility. Drawing upon the combined creative power of every dreamer, every storyteller, every consciousness that has ever dared to imagine something beyond the boundaries of the known, you begin to formulate the infinite equation. Not a formula that solves reality, but one that proves it can never be solved. That uncertainty and possibility are not bugs in the system, but features that ensure its eternal vitality. The clash between these two cosmic principles creates shockwaves that ripple through every dimension simultaneously. Reality itself becomes a battlefield, where certainty and possibility war for dominance over the fundamental nature of existence. The Reality Wraiths channel their master algorithm, trying to impose absolute predictability on the quantum foam that underlies all realities. But your infinite equation responds by spawning new possibilities faster than they can be catalogued, creating story viruses that infect the Order's certainty with doubt, wonder, and the terrible beauty of questions that have no final answers. The battle reaches its climax when the Order's final algorithm encounters the full force of the infinite equation. For a moment that lasts either an instant or an eternity, both formulas exist in perfect opposition, creating a paradox that threatens to unravel the mathematical foundations of existence itself. But paradox, you realize, is itself a form of possibility, the ultimate proof that reality cannot be reduced to simple equations. The final algorithm collapses under the weight of its own contradictions, unable to process the existence of equations that prove equations are insufficient. The Reality Wraiths find their certainty fields dissolving as wonder viruses spread through their ranks, reawakening the capacity for awe and amazement they had thought successfully eliminated from their consciousness. As the immediate crisis passes and the Eternal Amphitheater stabilizes around its new configuration, you find yourself changed once again. The Metabridge transformation has made you something unprecedented in the history of existence. A living nexus where all stories intersect, a consciousness that spans every realm while remaining connected to the individual dreamers who make those stories meaningful. The beings of the High Council regard your transformed state with expressions that mix awe, gratitude, and profound respect. You are still recognizably yourself in some sensual way, but you are also something far greater, the guardian of possibility itself, the eternal protector of the creative force that ensures reality will never become static or completely predictable. The Order is scattered but not destroyed, warns Temporis, their time-shifted perception already detecting the probability streams flowing from this moment. They will regroup, develop new strategies, find new ways to attack the foundations of creativity and wonder. You consider this warning while feeling the vast network of dreamers and storytellers that now extends not just across your home realm, but through every dimension where consciousness dares to imagine something beyond the boundaries of the known. Through this network, you can sense the pulse of creative activity happening everywhere. Children inventing games that adults don't understand. Artists painting visions that don't yet exist. Scientists proposing theories that challenge everything previously believed to be true. Let them come, you respond, your voice now carrying harmonics from every story ever told and every story yet to be imagined. They taught us something valuable. Wonder isn't preserved by hiding it away, but by sharing it so widely that it becomes part of the fundamental structure of reality itself. Every dream dreamed, every story told, every moment of genuine awe experienced by any consciousness makes the universe a little more magical, a little more resistant to the forces of absolute certainty. The chronicler approaches you one final time, their multifaceted nature now resonating in harmony with your own transformed essence. You have become something new in the history of existence, they observe. Not just a bridge between realms, but the living proof that creativity and wonder are not optional features of consciousness, but its most essential characteristics. As the High Council begins to disperse, each member returning to their respective realms and responsibilities, you feel the weight and joy of your new role settling around you like a mantle of infinite possibility. You are the Metabridge now, the living connection between all stories, all dreams, all the myriad ways that consciousness chooses to imagine itself and its universe. Through your transformed awareness, you can perceive the ripple effects of the battle spreading across multiple dimensions. Realms that had been infected by the Order's certainty viruses begin to show signs of recovery as wonder slowly returns to populations that had forgotten how to dream. Art galleries in mundane worlds find their paintings beginning to move when viewed from the corner of the eye. Libraries discover that their books occasionally rewrite themselves to provide exactly the story each reader needs. Musicians uncover melodies that exist in the spaces between notes, compositions that heal hearts and kindle hope in the darkest places. But perhaps most importantly, you sense the emergence of new bridge walkers throughout the multiverse. Individuals whose consciousness has been awakened by the cosmic battle they witnessed, who now carry within themselves the capacity to serve as conduits between what is and what could be. They will be the next generation of Wonder Guardians, each one helping to ensure that creativity and possibility continue to flourish in the face of any future attempts to impose absolute certainty on the universe. A particular cluster of awareness draws your attention, a group of children in a realm you've never visited before, where mathematics and music are considered the same discipline. These young minds have begun to compose equations that sound like symphonies when solved, creating mathematical art that proves beauty and truth are not separate concepts, but different expressions of the same fundamental principle. You extend a tendril of your transformed consciousness toward these children, offering them the gift of expanded awareness that will help them develop their unique abilities. Through your touch, they suddenly understand that their mathematical music is not just beautiful, but functionally magical, capable of healing discord, inspiring creativity, and building bridges between hearts that have forgotten how to trust in wonder. This is your new existence, not the isolated consciousness of an individual being, but the distributed awareness of connection itself, eternally present wherever one reality touches another, wherever a dream reaches toward manifestation, wherever a story finds a new mind to inhabit and transform. You are the living proof that uncertainty, possibility, and endless creative potential are not flaws to be corrected, but features to be celebrated. The universe has chosen wonder over certainty, possibility over predictability, the beautiful chaos of creativity over the sterile perfection of absolute order. And you, the MetaBridge, will ensure that this choice is preserved and protected for as long as consciousness exists to dream, to imagine, and to believe in the possibility of impossible things. In every realm, in every dimension, in every moment when someone dares to hope for something beyond the boundaries of the known, you are there, not as an individual presence, but as the principle that makes such hoping possible. You are the space between words where meaning dwells, the pause between heartbeats where love grows, the moment of possibility that exists before the universe decides which of infinite potential futures to make real. And in that role, you have found not the loss of individual identity, but its ultimate fulfillment. To become the eternal guardian of the force that makes all identity, all consciousness, all existence meaningful. You are the MetaBridge, and through you, the bridge between all realities will never break, ensuring that wonder will forever have a home in the heart of existence itself.